They were experienced hikers, but realistically, I don't think they were taking this hike particularly seriously. Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, who were both Dutch college students, head to Panama for a 6-week-long part vacation. So they head out, and they bring the hostel owner had a dog, and they decide to bring that dog along with them. It was a very friendly dog. So Kremers, Froon, and the dog head off for this hike up this volcano. They had a digital camera with them, in addition to water, and they had their phones, they had all the different kind of basic supplies. They had a camera, and so this is important because they take a bunch of pictures as they begin this journey. So that night, the dog returns to the hostel, but the girls aren't with the dog, and so this alerts the owners of the hostel. But they search the area, like I guess the immediate area, for the girls. They can't find them, and they decide, we'll just wait until the morning and see if they turn up. The next morning, they don't turn up. Additionally, the parents of the girls, they were used to getting very regular text messages from these girls to kind of let them know that everything was okay, and the text messages stopped. And so that alerted the parents as well by the second day after they've gone missing. And so authorities are alerted. Search crews were organized on foot for the first day. So April 2nd, there are search crews all over the place looking for these girls. Can't find anything. The next day, they set up aerial search teams. They're scouring the jungle looking for signs of these girls. No sign of them. The search continues, and then on April 6th, the parents of Kremers and Froon, they arrive in Panama. They immediately offer a $30,000 reward for any information about their daughters, which is a ton of money in Panama. It's roughly equivalent to about $500,000 in a developed country. 3 months go by, and there is not a sign of these girls anywhere. They have vanished. There's no leads. Nothing's been found. Obviously at this point, the family and investigators are at this point have pretty much accepted that they're probably deceased at this point, but they're looking for them. They want to know what happened. And a local woman finds Froon's backpack, her blue backpack, 5 miles away from where the girls were supposedly hiking. Even though it's incredibly moist, and there's lots of moisture in a jungle, the water oftentimes can't be drank. So the risk of dehydration is really high. The jungle that they were in was incredibly mountainous. And so in addition to just navigating a jungle, you're dealing with pretty significant elevation changes. I mean, it is a treacherous place to be navigating, absolutely treacherous. And for them to have moved 5 miles through dense jungle it's incredible. That is almost unbelievable. But nonetheless, their backpack is found, 5 miles away. In addition, the woman who found the backpack, she was a local woman, and she said, I'm out in this area a fair amount, and I've not seen this backpack. I saw it today, and I picked it up and reported it. But it just means that the backpack probably had not been sitting there for very long. It had been probably placed there within the past couple of days, let's say, which doesn't really provide that much clarity, but it adds to the kind of intrigue around what actually happened. So the backpack was in great condition, and everything inside the backpack was very neatly kind of placed. It looked like someone had very intentionally placed everything in the bag, zipped it up neatly, and put it down by the riverside to be found. It didn't have the look and feel of a backpack belonging to two missing people in the Panamanian jungle that's been missing for the past 3 months. It looked like it had just been grabbed off a shelf, put some stuff in it, and put down. But either way, inside there was, their sunglasses, there was a water bottle, there was some underwear that was in there, and their digital camera was in there, which is going to be really important. And both of their phones were in there, another really important part of this investigation. So when the initial search was conducted, it was done with a focus on the volcano area, because that's the last place the girls had been, at least as far as everybody understood. But now that they found this backpack 5 miles away, they had a new area to search. And so they start searching around the area around the backpack, and they quickly find some of the girls' clothing neatly folded on the side of a river, but no sign of the girls. And then another 2 months go by, And they finally locate, in the same rough area that the clothes and the backpack were found, they actually discover some of the remains of the girls. That DNA confirms it was them. But it's the state that the remains were found in, and some of the other things that were found in conjunction with these remains that raise a lot of questions. So of the remains that were found, DNA proved that some of them were Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. DNA also showed that mixed in with some of the bone fragments and pieces of remains that were found were at least 3 other people's remains. So we're talking about 5 people's remains in the same area. Also, interestingly, scientists were able to look at the bones, and there were no scratches on the bones. So that's important if you think about it, because their bones were found all over the place. They had been, broken apart, right? Well, if an animal had been responsible, there would have been scratches all over the bones because they would have broken the bones that way. Without those scratches, the only other way it could happen is if they've basically been pulverized, basically broken with like blunt force. So obviously something horrible has happened to these 2 girls, but their remains really only show investigators that the women had died. It doesn't show how they died or really anything. And so investigators needed to look at the other evidence to try to get a better sense of what actually happened. And so they look at the phone records, and they can tell that on April 1st, when they started this hike initially, there is a string of distress calls that are sent within like an hour of the hike starting. So whatever happened to these girls happened almost immediately on their hike. None of those calls connect. Over the course of those first 4 days, as they're trying to reach help via their cell phone, nothing's connecting, and then Froon's phone dies. Kremer's phone does not, and they begin, they or she, begin turning it off and then turning it on sporadically to try to get reception. On April 6th, something interesting starts to happen. Somebody was trying to access Kremer's phone. There was multiple failed login attempts, and it got to the point where you weren't even allowed to input any more codes. It was just like locked, the phone locked. So somebody was unable to get into the phone. From April 7th to April 10th, there were 77 calls attempted, distress calls attempted. And then on April 11th, the phone died, and that was it. So in addition to the phone, they started looking at the camera. And so when you look at all the pictures they took, the beginning of the camera roll is this wonderful, montage of these 2 girls having this great time hiking up this volcano. And then as night begins to fall, you can tell that their expressions begin to change a little bit. It looks like you could begin to see that maybe something was wrong. Perhaps they're lost. We don't really know. But then there's no more pictures taken until April 8th. 90 pictures, over 90 pictures are taken between April 8th and April 10th, which is that period of time where all those distress calls were made on Kremer's phone before Kremer's phone finally died. The pictures are very strange. There's a lot of theories about why they took the pictures they did, but in a nutshell, it's the pictures, none of them include pictures of the girls, with the exception of one, which is the back of Kremer's head, and it appears to be bleeding. The rest are shots of the landscape, and they're all taken in total darkness. So they're in the middle of the jungle in total darkness taking these pictures. There was one picture that looked like whatever gear they had been kind of lined up on a rock, and someone had taken a picture of it. There were pictures of candy wrappers, and there also was a picture that was like looking down into a ravine that perhaps was a picture of one of the girls down in the ravine. So it's unclear who's taking the pictures. It could be the girls, could be one of the girls, could be a third party, we don't know. And then there's a ton of speculation about one picture in particular. So picture 509, as it's been dubbed, because that was the number on the camera roll, was deleted from the camera. Now, that in and of itself is not particularly strange. It's not crazy to think that these girls might have deleted a picture, right? I mean, maybe they accidentally snapshot something and they just deleted it. But it was permanently deleted, right? So if you hit delete on a digital camera, it's deleted. But a professional with the right software could reconstruct that image if they plugged it into a computer. Now, in order to permanently remove it from your camera, the girls would have had to connect it to a laptop, to a computer, and wipe it that way. They didn't have access to a computer. So at most, they might have hit delete, but it still would have had that kind of archived, almost ghost image that a professional investigator could have reconstructed. But when they went to do that with this deleted image, it was wiped for good. So someone had managed to professionally wipe one picture. It was the last picture on the camera roll. So the pervading theory here is that these girls got lost and fell to their death. But to me, that's totally unsatisfactory. I believe they were murdered. And I think it's because there's just too many things indicating that foul play was involved. How did they go 5 miles across incredibly rugged terrain that even amongst Navy SEALs, that would be a very difficult distance to cover, even with all the right equipment? How did they, without the right equipment, not knowing the area, without a guide, without even flashlights, how did they do that? And then let's just assume they managed to go the 5 miles, okay? They fall to their death. Why are their remains, 1, incomplete, and 2, scattered and mixed in with other people's remains? Why were Kremer's bones bleached? And why weren't there scratch marks on the bones? I mean, you would think that in order for if they've fallen off this cliff, let's say, in order for their remains to be scattered all over the place and be dismembered, that an animal would have to be involved if there's no foul play involved. And there's no scratch marks on the bones, so an animal couldn't have done it. So there's lots of questions that go unanswered. And then if you look at those pictures again, it seems an awful lot like somebody else was taking those pictures. Somebody was trying to access Kremer's phone towards the end there, and someone looks like they were using their camera as well. And then, the backpack that was found, it just seems like it was kind of staged. But then again, like, to what end? Why were they giving away the camera and the phone, which kind of led them to thinking probably this is foul play? Why would they have placed the backpack? That doesn't really exonerate anybody. It actually just adds more questions about the case. So the whole thing is just very confusing, but the narrative that they simply got lost and fell, to me, seems like the most far-fetched thing out of all the theories.